create cash flow, what I'm doing is I'm looking at properties that have some big backyards. I've always had a strategy that land is great. It's the fundamental value driver, the scarcity of land. Sometimes that's helped by restrictive zoning as well. So with the properties that have big backyards and are buildable, I'm getting consent.
Dave Whitburn returns. He's a former lawyer, ex-Deloitte and Russell McVeigh. He started his 20 mil plus portfolio by putting a minor dwelling on the back of his section, and his latest development was 74 properties in West Auckland. Dave was president of the Auckland Property Investor Association and joins us today to talk tactical property tips. So, Dave, how are you creating cash flow in the current environment?
It's a really interesting market, Andrew, where we're seeing some challenges with the rents and fortunately the interest rates are coming down too. So to create cash flow, what I'm doing is I'm looking at properties that have some big backyards. I've always had a strategy that land is great. It's the fundamental value driver, the scarcity of land. Sometimes that's helped by restrictive zoning as well. So with the properties that have big backyards and are buildable, I'm getting consents and I'm taking action and I'm building on them. And I'm building because now the costs of building are starting to come down, particularly the labour components of them. And that's great for me because with interest rates coming down, you're able to produce quite a bit of surplus cash flow. So it's basically a long-term capital management strategy for me to go and do some alterations on properties. There's some additions, and that includes additions by adding extra ones there. One example is a property that I've got near Westgate in northwest Auckland, and that property I'm adding a 4-bedroom house to the backyard of that one.
Yeah, and that's a new build property or relocatable or what?
Yeah, that one I'm doing is a new build property as well, just with some of the site constraints needing a customized design. Wouldn't rule out relocatables, but case by case basis.
Yep. And so big backyard, what does that mean? Is it got to be 1,000 square meters or how small would you consider?
Yeah, absolutely. In the past, it was those 1/4 acre blocks or more like the 1,000 square meters there. But nowadays, those ones in the larger cities and population hubs, they tend to be not so affordable. So they're often, big backyards are often only 500 square meters or so these days. So in this case, I've got over 700 square meters to do it. But this one, the big backyard strategies really can be just depending on where your house is. On occasion, the house is really, obnoxiously sited, and it's on the diagonal, taking up all of the site and all of the building area. So that's where you potentially need to have some more significant costs, such as repiling. It's never just as simple as repiling, because otherwise your water lines, your sewer, your stormwater feeds, and your power and fibre need to get relocated as well.
So if you're looking to build on the back of a property, maybe you want to buy a property that has a bit of room on the back, or you already own one. Take us through the different kinds of consents.
Yeah, sure thing. So there are multiple different kinds of consents. A resource consent's commonly banded around. However, the resource consent actually has multiple subdivisions under the Resource Management Act 1991. For the ones there that virtual investors will focus on, we only really have to focus on 2 for this purpose, rather than having an academic or legal exercise on this. So those ones are the subdivision consent. And the subdivision consent covers when you are creating or altering title boundaries as well. So that might be an example where you're able to create a new parcel of land, so it gets a new record of title, which is capable of being sold, or indeed having a finance to a different lender through a mortgage being applied on that title. And then the other consent that investors and developers should be aware of is a land use consent, and that's the permission to use the land for a certain type of activity, such as residential housing. So I believe that in many cases, investors may need to not worry about the subdivision consent, but they may look at the medium density residential standards that the government's got, which allows you to put 3 dwellings on one title. In some cases, that'll work. You'll still need a building consent for that. You'll still need to comply with planning regulations. So, see 4-story neighbours shadowing you, blocking your sun for neighbours and things like that. But if you are doing that, then you would not be subdividing. You'd be having 2-3 dwellings on the same legal title, and that's something you should seek some planning advice, or at least deal with a competent architect to give you some feedback on. And if you're not going to be doing that and you're already in the correct zones, well, perhaps you only need to apply for a building consent. So you don't need to apply for a resource consent, whether broken down to the sub-activities such as a subdivision consent or a land use consent. So a building consent is covered by the Building Act 2004, and a building consent is basically a permit which authorizes you to do this building, and that makes sure that you're complying with the New Zealand Building Code. So then you make sure that the building is basically safe and fit for purpose and has reasonable standards to ensure longevity for yourself and all future occupants and of the building.
Yeah. So if you own a parcel of land and you want to buy a property and your main concern is around cash flow, then you would be less worried about the subdivision side of things, because that does cost a lot of money.
Costs money.
And it doesn't provide immediate value unless you really need that equity uplift to get the extra finance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an equity play, and it can be helpful for portfolio financing reasons as well. So it does require a little bit of work on that, and that's something that can be considered. Someone like Danny Payne and others in your team do some excellent work on that. So it's well worth having a conversation with them to make sure that you've got the right strategies and to work out your cash flow and your equity, because at the end of the day, what's property investment about? To me, it's about the three pillars. That's cash flow, equity, and growth. So you're wanting to do the best that you can to build your and your family's financial future. So having positive cash flow is great. It's always good to have more money in your back pocket at the end of the month than you had at the start of each month. But to get there, you do need to build equity as well. So that's where it's all about balance, and it's important to not just be short-term in thinking. Try to have that longer-term approach to think of where you want to be in 10, 20, 30 plus years' time.
Yeah, so let's say there's been this change with the driveway rules. We've gone from needing, for the rear sections, 3 meters of width on driveways, and now council has changed to 4.4 meters of width required. So there's properties that were potentially development properties for much bigger development. Now those are going to be limited. Are they limited to being 3 lot now, or are they limited even more?
Absolutely, Andrew. We looked at a few sections on Trade Me together last week, and we could see a number of rare sections that are being advertised in today's market that unfortunately having driveway sizes between 3 and sort of 4 meters. They're just unlikely to cut the mustard. This Plan Change 79 transportation that Auckland Council's got is going to restrict these. They're really adamant that we want to have the driveway with a raised path on it. That said, I am aware of some applications that have gone through to doing it and trying to back it with traffic engineers, but they're certainly being processed slowly, and there's no guarantee at all that they'll go through. So I guess we can talk just to make it safe. You do need them to be 4.4 metres in width, which means a 3 metre wide carriageway, which is for vehicles, and then a raised footpath, so there'd be a curb on it, and then the 1.4 metre wide footpath, which obviously can deal with prams and even bikes, scooters, whatever, on them as well. Keep the kids off the road is the idea on that. And whilst that's a good idea for driveway safety and things like that, I know from having been blessed with 3 kids myself that they would just ride on whatever they're usually not when cars are there, but on occasion we've had to do some restrained parenting to stop that there. So that's an interesting reason there. But commercially, it's going to rule out quite a few sites and make things a lot tougher, and that's a pretty bitter pill to swallow if you've bought a site at peak market in 2021 or early 2022 with sites there that just have this problem with this rule change. It's devastating for them. In any event, it also takes up site coverage because that area is going to be impervious surface area. It's over 1 metre wide. It's 1.4 metres wide. That may take out on the non-rear sites, since you have to provide that driveway width. If you're putting a driveway in the back or side of your property, it's going to take out at least one dwelling in most cases, and that's possibly going to change the metrics of your development. So you've got to be really careful of that for those in the in Auckland Council Territorial Authority region.
All right. Well, when it comes to driveways and consents, what tips and tricks have you seen to work with liaising with the neighbours and the neighbourhood if required? Yeah,
it does actually pay to be nice to your neighbour, but too many just put up a big fence and never talk to them. That's a little bit sad. If you can work in with your neighbours, you can do some great things. It might be that you're able to work together and potentially work collaboratively, so both of you could use it by creating perhaps a joint owned access lot. Perhaps you can do easements on that, so you can put down the a shared pathway to doing that, to make sure that space is used. That particularly works if the driveway is shared on abutting the boundary. If the driveway isn't abutting the boundary, it might be that their house is set back far enough that you might even need to talk to them about buying some of their land. Yep. So there are a few other ways of doing this, leasing it, other longer term arrangements can be made to doing it, but it does pay to be on terms with your neighbours and get that advice, get that topographical survey done so you can know exactly where the borders are. You won't be surprised to know how many fences are not in the correct locations, but amongst neighbours, particularly on older properties. So that also throws up some interesting results where some people get a bit worried because of where the fence is, and then they find out that, oh no, they're actually okay because the fence is 600 mil away from where it should be.
Yeah. And so with these changes, what are the arbitrage opportunities for builders and the savvy investors at the moment?
This gives some really good opportunities if you're able to buy a property that's subject to the constraints and the vendor believes that they're subject to the constraints, whereas they have had some problems with their neighbours. Perhaps they've been a bit harsh for them in the past, had some issues, a few too many noise complaints or something like that, whereas the new buyer might be able to do it. Door knock, have a chat to the neighbours and potentially solve that problem, get a covenant or something like that agreed, get easements agreed, whatever legal things need to be done, and working with the professional team to add value and unlock that rear site, because otherwise it's going to be hammered. In some cases, some of the sites we're looking at, you can only do 3 dwellings under the medium density residential standards. In some cases, if there are qualifying matters that exclude that as well, which can be historic heritage overlays, mana whenua, cultural overlays, significant ecological areas, or otherwise the transmission, the high tension power lines, sometimes only one, despite having big land. So that's terrible. But I think we saw one that's about 1,600 or so square meters there that would only be able to have one house on it, only because its driveway is 3.2 meters. Pretty brutal stuff there. But
so would you build like a very big single property that could be cut up into different tenancies? Or
absolutely, there are strategies like that to use as well. There's the up and under strategy where you can lift the house up on piles and create space underneath it. That's obviously subject to building consent and the issues as well with the fire rating, and certainly it's not it for the faint-hearted with the structural and fire engineering that's needed as well.
Yeah.
And it may well be that you're able to build a pretty large-size granny flat as well. We'll wait for the detail to come out there. That's something that Minister Chris Pink, for Minister for Building and Constructions, made some really good announcements on, but we'll see the detail on that shortly. But in a nutshell, it could be 65 square metre maximum for that without a building consent if you get that done by licensed building practitioners.
Yeah. I certainly, with our property in Sandringham, but I bought with a few different investors, the previous owner struggled to get permission from the neighbours for some drainage stuff.
Yes.
And we got permission during our due diligence period, so the property was worth more to us than it was to him, and for whatever reason the neighbour didn't want to deal with that guy, and he was happy to deal with us.
Absolutely. Another great project that you've done, Andrew, and I love what you do. So you're a solutions man, right? You find something, you find the problems, you fix the solutions, and you build great equity and cash flow from that. That's a great deal.
So what should we be looking out for with development properties? You know, is the real opportunity these smaller parcels, the 600-700 square meter properties with a little bit of land on the back, as opposed to the 1,000+ square meters that are attracting the attention of the developers?
Yeah, absolutely. But the interesting thing is with the water care rules, that with the supply constraints, it can be a bit patchy. They're making you do the assessments from our videos that we've previously done. Certainly got a lot of feedback on that on that I can see on your YouTube channel, but also personal feedback that I've got on that. A number of people are having problems. It's inconsistent because of the supply constraints. Some areas are really, really struggling and others are not. So the advice on that one, unfortunately, is not quite so straightforward, because in some cases, yes, buying between 600 to sort of 1,000 square meters is actually going to be give you a better outcome. It might be you can add a second or even third building on the same title to really enhance your cash flow and take advantage of some of the lower interest rates that we've got now and the lower build rates.
What about using tanks in place of connecting to the water infrastructure? You know,
That doesn't really work for the wastewater or sewer, but it does work for stormwater. So there is a way of doing that, and that can certainly help with your impervious surface area rules there. So doing tanks or pods and slab foundations, even integrating them in fencing. There's some really clever examples there and some really smart technologies.
I've heard of some people using fancy pump type solutions. They pump the sewage out of the secondary housing into the mains. Is that a temporary / illegal solution that gets things done? Is that better for cabins or?
I think it's better for cabins. I've heard of that too, and of course we've seen the terrible media for projects like Red Hills, Clark's Beach, where there are surge trucks that are going every few hours to empty up developments because the water providers, the Red Hills one, the Water Care, had granted them permission because everything was done, consents approved, engineering plan approved, done because the water infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure was going to be put in, but the pipes didn't get put in. So as a result, the show must go on. The building started, the developers just had to keep going for it, but it created a huge mess, and unfortunately the consequence having the unsightly sewer trucks going all the time, which is partly the reason why they don't want to keep doing this. Auckland is a growing city. It's one of the world's most livable cities from Mercer's Quality of Life survey. So what we want to do is we want to get the infrastructure in. Without the infrastructure, we've got problems.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for sharing these tips today, and we'll get you back again soon. Any questions, leave them below, and don't forget to subscribe. Financial